Hi, it's Ggoernert, Vice President and Senior Investment Advisor at Canaccord Wealth Management and ggoernert Wealth Management. Now, welcome to the channel where we help you make sense of the financial world. Now, today, I'm so happy to be joined by a resident fellow of the Fraser Institute, Fred McMahon. Fred, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for the invitation.
No, I really appreciate you taking the time. I was struck when I saw the article come across my screen last week. You published a piece called Reality Check, The Dangers of Debt Accumulation, and it was essentially a rebuttal of some recent comments that you saw across your desk as well. Can we talk a little bit about that?
Of course.
So, in your article, you talk about the former clerk of the Privy Council and some of the things that he had said about debt and where we might be right now. So let's talk a little bit about that.
Sure. It was quite an astonishing article, actually, in Finances of the Nation, which is usually a high quality publication or e-publication. He cited three IMF studies, all of which he claimed said that debt was no problem. In fact, one of them said debt is bad for growth and well-being. Another, which he claimed, said that debt could be built without it could be built forever. Actually said, no, it can't be, very explicitly. He quoted, what he quoted was a supposition the article was testing, and then the article rejected the very supposition, and how he missed that is astonishing. And another one, I think he attributed this to the wrong. He had three citations, and I think he attributed this to the wrong one because the one he attributed to didn't even address the question. But another one said there's no no simple relationship between debt and growth. And it actually didn't say that. It said that if you had a debt the size of Canada's now, if you were countries that continued to increase the debt, as Himmelfarb told us we should, had 0.5% lower growth than countries that were actively reducing the debt. You know, when we're having growth of 2 or 3% a year, 0.5 percentage points is a huge chunk of the growth. So anyways, it was astonishing when, frankly, all the alarm bells are ringing about what we're doing with deficits and debt.
Well, yeah, you refer to it at one point as hair on fire language by the IMF in the original article. Now, I think I tend to think that we get lulled just by the media and a lot of our political leaders that debt is no big deal. My background's in economics. Obviously, your background is economics, but it is a big deal, and it does grow, and there are consequences for this. Let's talk a little bit about, further going back to the IMF report that he cites, as you said, incorrectly, to where we got from here.
Sure. As a matter of fact, one of the quite curious things is that one of the IMF reports cites the debt reduction under Chrétien Martin. I suspect it was more Chrétien than Martin, but who knows? As one of the most successful in all of history. And they did it by cutting spending. Actually, if you look at spending cuts under Chrétien and Martin, they're far more dramatic than under Reagan or Thatcher. Which tells you something how impressions can go wrong. We always think of Chrétien as a left-wing politician. His fiscal policy was to the right of Chrétien, to the right of Ronald Reagan and Margaret Thatcher. I think that probably would astonish many Canadians.
Well, I think people forget, in the early 90s when, Chrétien and Martin came to power, and they cut hard. I mean, we didn't have a choice. That was back at the time we were talking about the fiscal cliff, and it was nasty. They downloaded a lot to the provinces, if memory serves, but it was it wasn't pleasant at that time. Now I don't know if we're anywhere close to that now, but those are the consequences, in my opinion, that these policies do eventually lead. That there is a reckoning at some point.
Sure, and of particular interest to your viewers is what's going to happen with inflation. Now, of course, inflation is fed by huge government debts and deficits. It increases demand beyond what supply is. And if there's demand for more widgets than there are widgets, the price goes up. And we're seeing a conjunction of two things right now. One, huge spending, deficit spending here, the United States, and around the world. So that huge increase in demand. Now, in the past, when that's happened, the supply chain was in the past, since the inflationary period of the 70s, the supply chain has been able to respond to that, and prices don't go up. So if you demand 220 widgets instead of 200 widgets, supply ratchets up. There's no or little increase in price. Now, if you're demanding 220 widgets and there are only 180 there, you can see dramatic increases in prices. Right now, so on the demand side, we're seeing that inflation. And on the supply side, we're seeing real bottlenecks. Now, some of the central bank advice is those bottlenecks will disappear. I don't think so. I think there's been a severe disruption in supply. So we see on one hand, vastly increasing demand, weakened supply, particularly in some areas, and that's a recipe for inflation, which we're already seeing.
Interesting. So so your hypothesis going forward is that these supply chain issues that we have right now will be more systemic than they are, or?
Well, they probably wouldn't be a huge problem if we weren't having the inflation on the demand side too.
Right.
Kind of a two to tangle thing. Yeah, my sense is all this is going to take a while to work out. I mean, factories are shut down; they have to be restarted. Shipping routes are disrupted or on hold. So no one has a crystal ball here, but I think we're entering into very, very potentially dangerous inflationary terror. Larry Summers, Barack Obama's, I believe he was Obama's Secretary of Treasury for a
Right.
while. Anyway, absolutely brilliant man, brilliant economist, and in the Democratic Party, so mild left, is warning that the United States could now see inflation like in the 1970s, and that's a frightening concept.
Yeah, that is. No, it's interesting. A couple of weeks ago, I had Martin Roberge on the show, and we talked about, the third wave of the pandemic. Up to this point, there's been demand, but restocking has been slow because we've had this stop-start restart in the economy right now. But once we get the third wave out of the way, my belief is once we get going this time, there isn't going to be a shutdown again. And so if we're already starting to see supply chain disruptions happening now and bottlenecks, we've seen it in the lumber industry, we've seen it across the board in commodities. When everyone gets called back to work and we start opening things up, I would think that we're going to see a bit of a spike here.
Yeah, and to fill that out on the demand side, it's not just this huge burst of government spending. It's that people's personal wealth has increased quite dramatically because they weren't spending during the pandemic. So you not only have the government splurge, you're going to have an awful lot of people wanting to splurge.
Well, yeah, because you've got, going forward, I think people have been, locked in their houses. They're going to go out. They're going to want to go spend some money and maybe make up for a year and a half of just ugliness that we've all been through. So to me, it makes sense that going forward that, maybe this, now we know that the Fed has stated in the States that they're going to let the economy run a little hotter, a little longer, because, throughout the 2000s and the 2010s, they had a hard time bumping up against their 2% benchmark or mandate that they're trying to do. So, Jay Powell has come out and said, yeah, we're going to let things run a little hotter, a little longer. But there seems to be a somewhat cavalier attitude towards the amount of debt that we're taking on. I remember the Troubled Asset Relief Program. That was back when the financial crisis happened on Lehman Brothers and AIG. And originally the TARP program was designed to be such a huge backstop that it would just give confidence to the markets that no matter what happened, we could take care of it. And originally, I believe it was going to be $200 billion, and it was $400 billion, and they settled on $800 billion. And when they tried to get it through Congress, because I remember being at my desk at that day, it was a Tuesday, and they voted it down because they're like, there's no way we can vote and approve such a large stimulus measure in such short order. And that was $800 billion. Now it seems like we go back and forth, and $1 trillion there, $2 trillion there, $3 trillion. You know, it's almost makes $800 billion seem quaint by comparison. So it's, you know, any thoughts on that, and, you know, just the mindset that we've got ourselves into?
I think it was Everett Dirksen who said, a billion here and a billion there, and soon you're talking about real money.
Exactly.
These days, it's $1 trillion here and $1 trillion there, and then you're talking about real money. We were largely made complacent about the dangers of debt. Now, debt and inflation are related. If you build up a whole bunch of debt and inflation takes off, and interest rates therefore take off, you can get really squeezed, particularly if, as is likely, the interest rates grow faster than inflation. Mm-hmm. But all of this is a mystery. We're in entirely new territory. But I think, just like you were saying, kind of lulled to sleep by the post-Great Recession experience, when money supply and government spending both exploded, and nothing happened to inflation or interest rates. And that meant the government debt was sustainable, and countries could start pulling it down. As I say, I think this time may be different, because you're having the demand build up not just with government, but with individuals. I mean, when the financial recession ended, you didn't have people with an extra $100,000 in their bank account that they really wanted to spend by next Wednesday. And now, so you have a, you know, different set of demand side thing, and certainly a different supply side thing. Now, just about everybody has been just about completely wrong on interest rates and inflation since the Great Recession. So, as I think it was Yogi Berra who said, predictions are difficult, particularly about the future. And I think we're entering into very perilous territory, but I guess making predictions is perilous too.
Well, I agree. Hey, why don't we wrap it up there? Really appreciate you joining, and, you know, come back sometime. I love your work, and hope to see you again.
Thank you. I appreciate the invitation.
Thanks, Fred. Fred McMahon.
Cheers.
Senior Fellow, Fraser Institute. Thanks, Fred.